So, having seen the Marvels now, I can say for a fact that I think the quality of the movies is finally catching up to their sales. I've personally been of the opinion that ever since Phase 1 5 started, like many people, there's been a serious decline in the quality of the movies. But for a while, the sales have not reflected. Most of the movies still do well. They've not been doing as well as their previous counterparts, but they've still been making more money than, in my opinion, they deserved to make. Mostly because, I had this argument with a few friends of mine where I mentioned that the MCU had a lot of momentum. Coming off Endgame, they had so much momentum that even if the quality of these products dropped, for some time these things were going to continue making money. That being because there's just a lot of people that support these projects, basically almost in like a religious fashion, and will just continue to attend them. But with every single bad project that gets released, there is just that much more faith that is lost, and less people come back next time. Less and less people care about the next project, until eventually you get to something like the Marvels, which apparently has the lowest opening ever in the MCU, and you're finally seeing that it's now beginning to peter out, right? It's beginning to reach a point where these projects are basically just throwing money away. At this point, the company would actually be more profitable if they just released nothing, which is what I actually want to talk about. Not so much the movie itself. The movie is bad. It's below average. It's not like the worst thing you can ever see. There were actually about 2 to 3 moments where I actually laughed. All of them were moments that belonged to Samuel L. Jackson. He just said something that just completely caught me off guard. There's a point at which Carol Danvers falls out of the sky and lands on the ground, and then he goes, "Oh, it's fine, it's Carol." Then there was a thing where he just blurts out black girl magic out of the blue. They kind of shocked me because I wasn't expecting that to happen, and it was like a cheap laugh because I didn't expect them to say that. There is also the initial fight where the characters are swapping locations. It wasn't perfectly executed, but I personally like the idea, so I did enjoy that fight. Outside of that, the rest of the movie was absolutely terrible. The villain was really bad. I felt like for that particular one, they chose the wrong actress. Also, the character was badly written, so not that having a better actress would have helped, but at least the screen presence would have been a little bit stronger. Now, that being said, I don't think it matters who the actors are in the MCU in general. I've actually seen a lot of people saying they should stop focusing on these new characters like Kamala Khan, and that they should bring back, the characters that people want to see, the X-Men. Yeah, that may generate initial interest, but I don't think that's going to save the MCU. The problem here is that the creative, the direction of the entire process and the direction of these movies, as well as the scripts. We keep hearing that they are rewriting, various movies. Almost every single movie has, noticeable reshoots within itself. And, movies always used to have reshoots. That's not something that's new. But the level at which they're happening within the MCU, at least from what we hear, is ridiculous. When you're watching this movie, it's very clear that we are looking at a sort of Frankenstein of multiple versions of the script. The same thing. It felt the same way in Secret Invasion, and it felt the exact same way even in Quantumania. At least Guardians of the Galaxy was fine, probably because of the James Gunn effect. He seems to be someone who is a little more in control of his projects because of him being an experienced, director who I think is not as easy to push around. But all these other directors and projects, they feel like they've been butchered to death. In order to watch and enjoy the Marvels and have the full background, you need to watch quite a number of projects. Unfortunately, if you watch those projects, the movie gets even worse. There is a certain plot point within this movie where a bunch of Skrull refugees are rescued by King Valerie and taken to Earth. Unfortunately, if you've seen Secret Invasion, that plot point doesn't make any sense, because when Secret Invasion ended, Earth was basically ground zero for a war against all off-world combatants. I think that's the term that they used. And so why would she be taking them to Earth? That doesn't make any sense. She'd be putting them in more danger. So it's very clear that when the script for Secret Invasion was being made, this version of the script that has this plot point in the Marvels was not the working version of the script, and therefore the final version, when it's all put together, it doesn't make any sense. Same thing with a certain plot point involving what was it? I'm spacing out at the moment. There is a plot point that involves Miss Marvel sort of realizing that her admiration for Captain Marvel is very childish and is not based on her understanding of the actual person, and that when she gets to meet her, she sort of realizes that she's a little more callous and cold than she thought. There is a part of the movie that feels like it's hinting at this and that is going in this direction, but then they immediately drop that plot point and never address it again. It's like the version of the story that focused on that particular aspect, the rest of that script was dropped. That version of the movie is the one that I would have loved to have seen. The one that sort of don't meet your heroes kind of thing, where she gets to learn that Carol is a real person and Carol gets to be inspired by her to maybe get back in touch with her life on Earth or something. I don't know, anything. Also, there was the angle whereby these three women come from three different generations. Kamala is a Zoomer, Monica Rambeau is a millennial, and then Captain Marvel is sort of from the Generation X kind of crowd because she's much older than she looks. So I was hoping for a version of the script that would play up these aspects, but unfortunately none of this happens. The script basically just ignores all these aspects and doesn't do anything with them. They instead decided to go for something that is like Thor, Love and Thunder, in that it's just a non-stop bunch of jokes just going back to back for the entire movie and making it sort of like a comedy skit. I guess that's one way you can choose to take the movie. Personally, I would have preferred one of the other approaches, but like I said, they made their choice and they have to roll with it. Personally, I think that bringing back Wolverine, bringing back the X-Men, Deadpool, starting Young Avengers, bringing back even Robert Downey or whatever is not going to save this project. This thing needs to take a few years off. People forget that Robert Downey was in Iron Man 3, which was terrible. It made money, but that was not a good movie compared to the others. So at this, it's not the actors that are responsible. It's not the actors or the characters that are responsible. When Iron Man and Captain America first started out, they were relatively unknown to the general public. And so with the right directors and creative heads, these projects can be made to work regardless of which heroes are being used. The problem is that the writing is bad and there is no coherent direction. If that doesn't change, it doesn't matter who is cast in any of these roles. What I think needs to happen personally for the MCU is that I think it needs to take a few years off. I think the whole thing needs to take like 3 years off or 2 years off, because currently any project that's currently in the pipeline is still being developed, has been developed rather, by this team that's been working on phase 4 and 5. In my opinion, all those writers and creators need to be scrapped completely. They need to get more veteran or at least more experienced creators, people who have worked in TV and movies and other things like that for a while. Give those people the projects, give them the entire thing, and have them basically start from scratch using the same characters we currently have. Don't bring back the old ones. We don't necessarily need new ones. Just bring back just get the right people to run the projects and write the scripts, and I think it will be fine. Without that, personally, any project that's currently in the pipeline is already contaminated in my opinion. And I do not see how releasing it is going to in any way help the MCU. Those projects should all be dropped and new projects started up. I think if that is done, then the MCU has some chance of coming back. Otherwise, at this point, anything that gets released only does further brand damage to what is already a fracturing shell. So yeah, that's just the quick thoughts I wanted to put out. Thanks for listening.